Welcome, everybody, to the new Mid-Curve podcast. This is Funky Donk, and this is my new voice I'll be using in a very professional manner for the rest of the time we do this show. Just kidding. This is me, and I'm here with three of my good friends in the Mid-Curve. I don't know what we call ourselves. Like, it's not really an investment group. It's more like a loose collective of idiots is what I'd like to refer to it as. Bunch of people who have gotten into trading, who are from various different parts of business, DeFi, TradFi, media, all sorts of other things. Very quickly, we ask everybody at the top of the show to give a couple lines of bio. As I said, my name is Funky Donk. Also, real life name is Gavin Purcell. I am a media person, came from a mostly TV background, but did a lot of digital media. Am now working very closely with Carly Riley on overpriced JPEGs and working in Web3 media, which is a weird thing to say, but it's absolutely true now. Salty, let's start with you. Want to give you a quick bio?
Yep. I've been in crypto for a while, maybe longer than everybody here. But somehow I never came up with the idea of just posting my address and asking people to send money to it. I feel like a moron now. I can't believe I've been doing this for a decade and I never crossed my mind.
Who would have thought?
So,
Who would have thought that's
uh,
how to make money?
yes, serial underperformer. We'll just go with that.
That's fair. Grant, do you want to give your quick bio before we jump in here?
Yeah, my name is Grant. I come from the world of traditional consulting. I fell accidentally into this space 2 years ago, and I can't believe I haven't fallen accidentally into, tens of millions of dollars like Ben.
Yeah, of course. God, we're going to be talking deep about how do we get free money in this episode. Okay, before we jump in, Eric, give us your quick bio.
Hey guys, this is Eric, former TradFi weirdo, now full-time NFT weirdo. Also interested in how I can get some of this free money. Because you used to have to commit, in the old days, you used to have to commit wire fraud to really do it. But now I guess you can just post your address and have people send it to you.
I guess so. I guess that's how it works. Also, Eric, I'd like to know how to get you to do this podcast at home rather than in the street. So whatever we can do to make that happen, let's try to make that happen. All right.
We're not 100% sure yet that this isn't wire fraud. So who knows? Maybe it's everything
That's
old
true.
is new again. Just some good old fashioned.
Wouldn't that be fascinating? Fraud. Like, I mean, this is okay. Let's before we do this, we have a lot to talk about this week. Let's do our one word for the markets because this is a fun way to jump into it. I think I will start, and actually, I'm going to say, I'm trying to think of the best word to say this. I think I am blind right now. When I say blind is the word I want to say, is that like I've kind of tuned out, which scares me a little bit. And I don't know how y'all feel about this, but like everything that's happened over the last week has kind of told me I think this is I don't want to be part of what's going on because all the stuff we'll get into. And I think I've shut my eyes and I've gone blind. And I think that is not where I want to be because I know that's also where I miss stuff. I think of the last time when I went blind was I think after it was in the midst of the bear in last summer and I went blind. I basically was like, I think I told a couple of discourses in, I'm going to touch grass for this week. I'm sick of this stuff. And I missed Digi-Daigaku that week. And it was the one time that I had folded out of the space. So right now I feel blind, but it's not something I think I'm going to keep going on to. Eric, what about you? What's your one word for the market this week?
I will kind of refer to the parable that I quoted. Right? It's Rashomon. It is full on Rashomon because I think the last bull market when some of this stuff was happening, there was some novelty, there was some magic, and now we're deep into the part of the cycle where everyone's down bad. The novelty and magic has worn off, and it's just Robin season, and so we are just straight up scanning. Right. Yep. And this stuff is really, really, really fucking unsavory. So I'm kind of at that point where, I sort of just completely tuned out of shitcoins just because at this point, it reminds me of sort of the free meta that came after Goblin Town, where people were just donating money on gas and just getting grinded to dust. And I feel like for the most part, that's what's happening right now where things pop up, but everyone's kind of just chasing it and slowly getting like chipped into nothing. And so like the optics of it are gross, the mechanics of it are gross. It seems very negative EV for the most part to participate. I'm kind of just distancing myself from the whole thing.
That makes perfect sense. Grant, what about you?
Not so doomer as before, probably because I'm getting healthy dose of vitamin D these days. But I mean, I do agree that everything's kind of just in one ear, out the other. And anything on mainnet right now is just not interesting unless you're kind of slowly accumulating, some promising higher floor projects for the next cycle. I'm not as mad about the bans and the shitcoin stuff, mainly because gas is like acceptable now. Like basically is like around 20 to 40 these days, which is like decent enough for me. And whether or not he goes to prison eventually is I don't really care. But I do think it's a reputation thing. It's like obviously a much smaller version of like the SPF incident, I guess. Like in previous cycles the space was much smaller, and there was attention certainly, but not as much as the previous blow off top, where we just had all sorts of massive institutions. So some of them still are kind of entangled and intertwined. Some frantically backpedaling, trying to sidestep into AI, and all these celebrities who got sued and are still kind of entangled from the previous mess. So it's just, yeah, I would say on a macro lens, it's a little bit worrying.
What's your word? What's your word, Grant? Pick a word.
I don't really have a word. It's just it's the same as it always was. It's kind of just malaise. You're waiting for a shoe to drop, right? Either another piece of bad news happens and we go down, or we kind of just tread water until next year.
You don't think there's a bunch of shoes that have already dropped, or no? You don't feel that way? You feel like there's
Well, it
shoes
has, but every time you think it's the bottom, we find something new to cling on to, right?
But there's 6 people have been wearing, like, somehow we got a 6-legged person, and like we're on shoe 5 and we're expecting shoe 6 to drop, which is pretty frightening to think about. Okay, Salty, what about you? What's the word that you have for the market?
There are more shoes to drop. That's for sure. The worst part about hell is you never reach the bottom of it.
Oh, that's interesting.
Things can always get worse, right? They really.
By the way, I will say the worst part about hell reminds me, and I don't know how many other people on this call, but something just dropped that will take my mind off of this market, which is Diablo 4. So shout out to all the people out there at Diablo 4 land. It's a very fun time for us. So back to Salty. Sorry, Salty.
I enjoyed the beta of that. Yeah, that was good.
It's coming out. I think for the early, you have to have spent more money, so you get it this weekend. It comes out on Tuesday for everybody, but it dropped. Anyway, what's your word, Salty? Sorry.
I mean, I'll echo. I think it's been talked about, but I guess kind of sad. There's just the liquidity that's stuck here has stuck here, and actually, that's incredible. There's billions, tens of billions of stable coins, not just in TVL, or in market caps, but in actual stables that are backed by assets via Tether or DAI or USDC. Like all that money is here and it's actually stayed. There's actually something for it to still do, which is new this cycle. Really, there was just nothing to do in past cycles. And so when it drained, it really drained, and maybe it drains a lot more. But that money's there, and we're all just fighting over that same slosh of money. And it's just kind of sad because a lot of people are getting rinsed. I think Eric said, a lot of people are seeing it just get chipped away. It's just like no one who had whatever in their brain and soul that made them get here in the first place, which is a rare person, has it in their brain and their soul to just sit on their hands. So there's so little to do, but we can't stop doing stuff 10 hours a day and just losing money for it.
I mean, that's why I say Diablo 4 is actually a great thing, because it'll just take our brains away from this stuff in some ways. But I think it's been very weird. I will say, okay, there's a couple interesting highlights that I do want to point out that I think, there's a couple things. First of all, Captains is almost at 10 ETH from an NFT perspective, which is pretty impressive to see what, Ray and that team have built. That's something that continually going on. Of course, very much on the speculation around meme and what's coming up with meme. there have been interesting things that have happened in Pudgies. There's been interesting things that are happening, even in the Miladies world, like there, and even what Blur's doing. So there are interesting things happening. But then I was really laughing about this, and I'm actually curious to know. We're going to start off with the NFT side, just because that's where my brain is. And did anybody of you all see that Grapes project that launched today or launched yesterday? Did anybody see that?
Is this an NFT?
It's an NFT. So it's a project called Grapes, and it launched as an OpenSea launch. And I think it might have, I don't know who it was, but it was a couple guys who had connections to a bunch of old, like a bunch of other media brands. And it was launched at 0.05. I think 0.03 something actually. And then it peaked at it went up to 0.4 today. And I was like, what is this? What is this back? And I think it's what you were saying, Salty. It's just like whenever the focus of the money goes to one thing, it can still pump. But then I think it's now back down again, right? Like this is the world that we're in. There's just this continual PvP thing until something interesting happens. I guess we should start off talking about this whole like give me money meta. I mean, who do we start with? Eric, what do you want to tell us about this? Because it is kind of like it's semi-depressing to kind of be in the middle of, but it's definitely something that you can see continually going on. Like, why don't you give us the 3-sentence version of what you see happening in this kind of give me money meta and where it's coming from?
It's coming from it's coming from hope, despair, and greed.
Okay.
Those are I think the three dominant themes here, right? Because we hope that everyone who participates in one of these things knows it's usually a fucking sham, but we're all equally greedy, and we're hopeful that this is the one that goes in 10x. And then so we end up co-opting, I think, like really, really troubling and gross behavior, and that just makes us in aggregate look like a fucking group of idiots.
Yeah.
And so, I think like Ben's situation was obviously like that's one of the worst, but there's been multiple cases of like scams being perpetuated by people on chain, guys just disappearing, someone running a long con, faking cancer to raise money and actually getting Andrew Wang to endorse the fundraising process. It's just like, and obviously all the influencers and LARPs on Twitter are also trying to cash in on it, right? And so there's a couple of permutations of it. People's brains broke when Pepe took off, and now we're in this part of the cycle where like they're trying to replicate the magic. But the mercenary mechanics are very, very much in play. And so the capital is called upfront. There's clear expectations of profit, and everybody just sort of keep their hands or undercuts each other into zero. And the only guys that really make money consistently are the teams or the guys behind the rugs. Like that's kind of it. There's not much else.
But by the way, the funny thing about this, I was talking to somebody about this earlier, is like this is the shitcoin, playbook, in that the guys who make money in shitcoin, or the people that make money in shitcoins, are the people that create the shitcoin. This has been like the thing about shitcoins for, however long shitcoins have been around. Let's say, 2+ maybe longer, obviously further back with ICOs and things like that. But the ultimate scam in this space is that's how the money gets made. And I think that I think you're right, Eric, because something like Pepe, and then to a lesser extent Turbo and Ben and all these other things that kind of pop, everybody's chasing that next thing. And I think that the idea that now, I think there's actually two important things to talk about here. One is the send me money meta, which is like, I'm going to launch a token, send me money, which was, started ostensibly in many different pathways, but really Ben.eth kind of like the PSYOP was like kind of the peak of that. And then there is this other thing, the Andrew Wang thing, which we should dig into too, which is like, a traditional, social engineering job, but on a real long con basis, which is fascinating. So like maybe to start off with the kind of like send me money thing, I guess, Salty, as somebody who's been in crypto for a while and clearly, saw the crazy ICO stuff and all the things around there, like, does it just feel like this is a cycle we hit at some point in the crypto cycles, that like we're now in this world where this is just this part of the cycle, and eventually we'll get out of it when enough people get hurt and screwed over?
I I mean, it won't end till the last dollar is taken, right? It's just we happen
Right.
to end the cycle before then and new money flows in. But no, there's no limit. You know, if as long as there's stupid people, there will be people to take their money. And of course, I've lost money playing this game too. None of us would do it if there was no chance of upside. But you know, you mentioned that NFT project grapes or whatever that like and so money attracts money, right? And people want to put their money in
Right.
things that are outperforming other things. But that kind of psychology leads people to always buy the top, right? So somehow, so you guys as the NFT experts, somehow the NFT whales seem so much worse at this. It is truly unbelievable. Like if you're a DeFi or token or shitcoin person, if you drop a couple mil into an LP and triple something's price, it is guaranteed almost that people will follow you into that LP and you can dump and yank and just make a quick 20, 50, 100%. It doesn't take a huge amount of money, especially on these shit coins, to pump an LP and get a bunch of profit out and leave everybody else like stark. Right. But I look at like somehow in the NFT world, I look at like Franklin or Machi, whoever, and these dudes are losing thousands and thousands of ETH. Like this is the place where all the poors and the mid poors lose money. If you're really, really stacked, you should not be losing money right now. Just pull a
Right.
Ben.eth, post your address, or pay $10,000 for some insane Twitter shilling from bot armies, or triple something's price with $1 million of LP and then walk away with an extra million 2 days later. Like I don't know like if the NFT people are just worse than this, and they're the ones I see on Twitter. Now is the time when, we're all getting ground down, or those who continue to try to play these markets can be. I think the grinding is mostly happening from the whales and the super whales and the sophisticated people that none of us even know about who are out here doing this stuff. In like everybody
Yeah,
loses
that makes sense.
$100 here, $100 there. I don't think those losses are being distributed. I think they're collected into a small like cadre of folks.
Well, it's funny. I have a guy who has been surprising surprise, relies on me to give him advice on like what to do investment wise. Which I'm sorry to everybody that believes that, but who's like very like I got a kind of a very sad Discord message from him, which was a little bit of like, hey, I'm down on shitcoins, and I'm like, I know it's like it's hard because like everybody thinks that they see somebody win on a shitcoin that you can win again and again. And my experience, I lost like the last shitcoin meta, which was a brief meta before this one, was like last summer. And I think I did okay in the beginning, and then I ended up losing like I think almost 10 ETH on it. You know what I mean? And like it just doesn't ever win, right? Because you think you're going to do okay. It's like, I mean, shitcoins are gambling as much as anything else in this space is, but you think there's a system and there just isn't, right? And it just seems like such a crazy thing. I mean, I don't know. Ultimately, it's a pretty crazy situation, and I think that we just have to kind of wait it out. I mean, my big thing is like I'm looking for things that seem interesting to me, and like zero of the shitcoin world seems interesting right now, and maybe there's new NFTs on the horizon. Let's switch over to the social engineering side of this conversation, which is again like not the most fun conversation to have, but yeah, if you missed it, there was a big like essentially a long con that went on with this project called Pixel Penguins. And it sounds like there was a founder who was purporting to be somebody that was an artist in the space and got sent their art or talked to Andrew Wang, the famous NFT influencer, and got them excited about it. And Andrew was into this, thought this art was really good. And then the long story short is eventually it turns out that this person said they had cancer, and Andrew did a long Twitter thread about how this person had been somebody they'd gotten to know over time, and that this project, Pixel Penguins, was their way to help raise money for this, blah, blah, blah. And of course, it turns out that that was not a real person, probably. At least it is, maybe it is a real person, but it is not the person that was presented as. And honestly, I have to say, like, I know you may have your specific feelings about Andrew Wang, but I felt pretty bad for him in this instance. And I actually am curious to hear, I think a lot of other people on this panel have different, probably, maybe different takes on this, but I think it's interesting is that, like, when you think of social engineering, you think of like a Bored Ape holder who's, making a Discord deal with somebody and doesn't do their due diligence. You don't often think of somebody who's known somebody for months in this instance and then like really goes to bat for them. Grant, I'm actually really curious to hear your thoughts on the situation. Like, where do you fall in this world? Is it, I mean, what do you think about how this all went down? Like, does it just feel like another example of bad actors in the space, or is there anything special about this particular instance?
Not really. Yeah, I'm not interested in this very much. I think people were trying to pump this project up because it was like contra to, I guess, Ben and like all the influencers with like a hand open for people to throw their money into. And this was like, oh, cancer victim, yada yada yada. But this was, I think, just Andrew has his strengths and his weaknesses. But this was, I think, just a case of him not doing the due diligence originally, like a year ago, and then obviously falling into, I think, a bad habit of just making assumptions about someone that you don't actually know, right? And then it got blown out of proportion because I think he shared it with a group of people who all had presence online, and they did their thing. It's unfortunate for basically everyone involved, but I don't think there's much to extrapolate about like, have we reached new lows because of this this incident? No, it happens every week.
It also just seems really inefficient because in the span of time it took to like social engineer Andrew, this person probably could have done like 5 meme coin scams and made way more money.
You're probably right. They could have launched a bunch of different NFT projects and made a ton more, I would assume. It's do we know how much it even took in? Like, I missed this, by the way, this mint and everything, but I assume that it wasn't even that expensive of a mint. It's pretty terrible. I mean, it's small pixel art stuff, but I can't imagine they were very expensive, were they? Does anybody know?
Along with his like fake foundation, or his or her fake foundation, it was like just north of like 100 grand, which to that point wasn't.
I mean, that's definitely something. That makes sense. Anyway, I think that unless I don't know, if we don't have any more thoughts on this, I think we can probably move on. It's just one of those examples of what a weird world we live in. I kind of actually want to talk a little bit about some TradFi stuff this week because I'm kind of curious to get a sense, Eric, from you, I guess, especially about kind of where we go from here. There's two things that are kind of tied into this. One is, and maybe we can start here because it's a little more crypto centric. There's the news out of China, which it seems like at least, we don't know the whole thing, but it seems like China is starting to embrace crypto in a way that is slightly surprising to me. Okay, Eric, let's talk about this because I think it's pretty interesting. Like this news out of China that they're getting a little bit more friendly to crypto. I even heard a Meebit was featured on Chinese state television, which is interesting. So I don't know what sort of impact is this going to have, and do you think this is a good thing for the markets? Is my question.
I mean, that's been a big part of the narrative. Like China koi season was kind of leading into this with the idea that in June, Hong Kong would make it legal for citizens to participate in cryptocurrency exchanges, and basically trade crypto, right? And so like it obviously this was actually like a pretty like well-known pattern of people buying into the rumor and selling on the news. And so I think like if you look at obviously the state news media, if you look at the publication of guidance around cryptocurrency, it definitely seems like Hong Kong at the very least is trying to become a more crypto friendly zone. With that being said, in the same week, the multi-chain team, which is also based in the mainland, was allegedly arrested by the Chinese police. So I think there are definitely going to be puts and takes here. But yeah, but this is not. I don't think this is like a China only phenomenon, because in Europe you have MiCA, which is also beginning to provide guidance around crypto assets, and so I think this is just one of those kind of sad realizations where like the rest of the world is starting to really wake up and get on board with providing a framework for crypto to operate. And the US is just behind in that respect.
Yeah, I think it's pretty scary how far behind they're getting in some ways. Yeah, I mean, it's interesting. Salty, to go back to you in terms of looking at and watching the American versus, I say, the rest of the world. I mean, you have people in London, you have people in Dubai really getting forward on it. Like, is this just a mistake that we've made in the past, or do you feel like we're now going down to kind of like a dead end where we're going to get stuck in for a while? Like, do you have a thought on that?
Is what a mistake specifically?
Basically, I think the way that the U.S. is approaching crypto right now versus the rest of the world.
I don't know, man. We need Sadie for more of that. I feels nearly impossible to speculate. I mean, the whiplash politically of all this stuff, like everything else, is not only increasing in magnitude, it's increasing in frequency. So I mean, I've thought for years there's a clear case to make for political people supporting crypto for all sorts of reasons to establish a base of people across political class. I mean, like, it all makes sense. There's lots of things that make sense, but nothing in politics makes sense, and I don't have the bandwidth to like keep up with it. So, I mean, if the U.S. I said the market was sad, I'll say this is sad. You know, it's like if the U.S. wants to shut down innovation and stifle innovation and be unfriendly to innovators and be the place people don't want to incorporate, that just sucks. No, it just sucks. I feel almost powerless to do anything about it because we live in a gerontocracy. And I mean, we have people who were born before like typewriters were invented making prognostications about our industry. So, dude,
Wait,
I'm
when
not
were
being
typewriters
hyperbolic
invented?
here.
I don't
Okay.
think that's possible. I think you're full of shit, man. There's no fucking way there's people alive that were when typewriters were invented. Let's find this out. Actually, let's do real time research.
We need a guy like the other podcasts have a guy who just does research. We need that guy. And say, hey,
Yeah,
Jimmy,
exactly.
look this up
Hold
real
on.
quick.
Well, I think this is something. Typewriter, okay. 1874. So I would be very shocked if
No
there's somebody who's still alive
140-year-olds are
from
in the Senate,
1874.
but
But
close. It's pretty close.
I mean, Warren Buffett and Charlie Munger might be getting close. They definitely look like it, but I don't think they are. Grant, what about you? You have a thought on what's going on in China at all? Like, do you think it's a positive thing for the crypto space in general?
Probably too early to tell. Like it's been known for like 6 months that they are, or we're in the midst of like changing their minds, and Hong Kong, as it always is like their experimental hub for new things. So we'll see. I think it's more so a signal of like, hey, we're open for business. In contrast to our American counterparts. Yeah, like for example, there's this coin that like in our group we had been playing pretty early on actually, because it had like a history of cooperation with the government from like previous cycles, and it had a partnership with like the Instagram of China and whatnot, and everything was looking really good. And then I think earlier this week they announced like a separate protocol and coin was actually working on like a stable coin in collaboration with the government there. So it's all a little bit hazy and confusing right now, and probably just take some time to work it out.
Yeah, that makes sense. It's interesting. I was trying to think about like. Actually, I do want to ask one more question of the three smarter people than me in this room, because I have heard and had some discussions around this idea, and I'm kind of curious to know. And if this is just speculation, we can always cut this out. But like, there is an idea in some ways that China and these different places, so the Saudis and different places around the world, are more than happy and excited to get off the U.S. dollar standard, and that crypto can kind of like speed by embracing crypto that can speed that up. Eric, is there truth to that, or is that just like like deep financial conspiracy theory? Like, I mean, do you think that like there's a world where the dollar doesn't become the world standard in the near future, or is that something that like is still kind of a fantasy?
I think it's a little bit fanciful to kind of get there at this point. Realistically speaking, if you look at dollar dominance, we really have not moved the needle at all. And I think for the most part, what's happened at this point is just more of like rhetoric, and also China's major trade partners just doing what they can to kind of appease the government. So, but realistically speaking, right, like all of this in the context of like geopolitics, China has been very pro CBDCs and they've been aggressively pushing a digital yuan for a very simple reason, is that when you have transparency into the movement of money, you can also enact control over it, especially when you're talking about something like a centralized stablecoin. And that for the government is really appealing.
Right. And why is that? Why do you think? I'm just kind of curious. It's because control, is that why?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I do think there's this interesting dynamic, and again, we need Sadie here to ask more questions about this. But it's like it's almost not the dollar per se that is the global currency. It's like the euro dollar. It's the dollar liability, right? It's not like these people are trading in actual cash dollars or using Fed now for the global economic transactions they do. But we do have these like cash dollars at home in the US that we use and are really
Yeah.
the last bastion of private and secure money out there. Like there's nothing remotely private about any crypto, and you can tell someone's very new and very confused when they start talking about like of course Bitcoin started with some of these libertarian ideals, and I'm not saying those ideals are for naught, but of course there is no more traceable way to spend money than in the crypto world. Like it is the maximum most public unprivate way to use and spend your money. Who really pumps this narrative too to like the far end of the left curve and is so sad to see is Richard Hart and the Pulse Chain stuff. So like, Pulse Chain launched, exploded, and just
Yeah.
died, and it's just down only, of course. Very little capital flowed into it. I mean, you could see it coming a mile away. I think me and some other people tried to play some Pulse Chain shit coins, but it's very sad to see, taking advantage. We've talked about hope, and we talked about sadness, we've talked about greed, like seeing Richard Hart tell these people, internet, the dollar is just made up. It's just made up money, and you can just make up your own money. And we're tired of those big mean people having all the control over everything, and we're gonna take over. And it's this populist, it's this encouraging, it's this hopeful message, which gets to people because they feel like they don't have opportunities, they feel shut out, they feel like they're not gonna get ahead. And then of course, if they were going to get ahead, now they're really not going to get ahead because they invested in Pulse Chain. They're losing their houses and everything.
Who said this in midterm? I thought they put it really well. It's that they called it the Pyongyang, because it's basically a one-way street. You can come in but not out.
You kind of can't now.
really
It's still like
funny.
Pyongyang. You have to go through a
my
DMZ and
God.
get permission from the glorious leader to leave. You can kind of bridge out a little, but of course it's a shit show. But it gets to these ideas of like, what is money, and these different, it's amazing that crypto's borderless, right? Like it really is a global market we get to engage with, and it's awesome. We shouldn't lose sight of that. So we shouldn't get too obsessed on a single country either.
for
What's
sure.
China doing? What's the US doing, right? Because a lot more dollars out there than just in those two countries.
It's an international game. Yeah. No, that makes sense. Although, I mean, if you think about it, the China and America and then India are like the three major population centers of the world. But you're right. There's a lot more going on.
For some reason, everyone cares about Europe and Japan with banking, though, right? Nobody's tracking Indiaism too. But if there was a me bit on Chinese national TV, I think we're gonna make it, guys.
I think maybe so. We'll have to see what happens. But in general, I think it's probably a good sign for crypto as a whole that it's not going to die completely. We'll see. Before we go, I do want to talk about one other big NFT thing that's coming up, because I think a lot of people here will probably have something to say about it, is the Azuki event, which is coming up pretty soon. It's coming up in a couple weeks. And Azuki is a thing where is a project where obviously it's long history now, and they've done a pretty good job of really, in a lot of ways, a pretty good job of not dropping much at all, like really like not doing a lot. And this seems like an event that for the first time in a while, when I say not doing a lot, that's, I don't want to undersell, but unlike a lot of other projects, they have not done a lot of things in the last, say, 6 months that have been active new content or projects. This is a big event. There's an expectation for this event. I think, Grant, I want to ask you, as somebody who's in the Spirit DAO and part of the kind of Azuki universe, like, what do you think in the Azuki world the expectations for this event are? Do you think that there's an expectation that there's going to be something large announced, or is it just a community gathering? Like within the actual community, what's the feeling on it?
I'm probably the wrong person to ask, and I don't spend a lot of time in the general Azuki community. But yeah, I mean, after the not the last, but the last official kind of Azuki event, there are certain expectations that are baked in to. I don't know that we've seen the price action start, but like with 20-ish days to go, I think we can expect to see some of that speculation begin. I think no matter what happens, I think the team has played its cards pretty well in terms of its activations and its drops over the last year or so of the bear market have been very focused on pleasing its whales, its top holders, and sort of enticing other players with larger pools of capital to come and participate. And its roadmap of, I would say, NFT dilution is, when you compare it to something like Yuga, it's like night and day, right? Like you have distinctly 30K assets. I'm not going to count Bobu because it's Bobu. But yeah, you have 30K assets that are native to the Azuki ecosystem, and then you look over there at Yuga, and it's just I've lost count already, but it's like probably like 150,000 at least. So yeah, I think it's just biding your time until there's enough retail interest and liquidity that returns, and then you can sort of go back to, I think, the original plan of that NFT supply dilution. So yeah, I think should be a fun event. And there could be a checker wallets event, there could not be. Either way, I think it'll be eventful. There's certainly plenty of projects that are, I don't know, mid-tier, blue chip, whatever the hell you want to call them, that have been waiting for like a big player to announce like a milestone event, and then they've just like jammed all these, like, I don't even want to call them catalysts, they're just bullshit. But they've basically jammed them in front of the Azuki event to try and front run some hype and get some action on their collections, essentially, which has been interesting to see.
Yeah, I think that is interesting. I mean, it definitely feels like there's a lot of people that are in the same way, by the way, that like Meta just rolled out Quest 3 ahead of Apple's Reality Pro announcement next week. There's a lot of people that know you can draft off these things in a certain way. Eric, you and Pomp, another mid-curver, have some Azuki holdings. What's your feeling about this? Are your expectations high, or do you really care? Where are you coming at with it?
I mean, I think my expectations are kind of irrelevant. The market expectations are definitely high, just because if you plot like the time scale of Azuki's price over, let's say, the last 6 to 9 months, it's clearly being one of the best performing established PFP projects, right? And I think a lot of that has to do with the expectation of something big leading up into this event, and whether or not that drives a continuation of demand, or whether it's just a blow off top and we kind of call top here for this sector. I don't know. But I do think like there is tremendous value in not doing much, or not making unforced errors when there is friction and not a lot of eyeballs in this space, and we're in the midst of a bear market. And I think, like, for the most part, they've been able to sort of come back from the abyss and perform well, simply because they minimize the amount of opportunities they have to fuck up, right? Which is not something I can say for the other project. And then I can definitely make another Kevin Rose dig here, because he's obviously already put himself in the spotlight again this week. But I just think, like, it's a little sad at this point. But it's not necessarily a new phenomenon with a lot of the founding teams on these existing projects. It's just unforced error after unforced error after unforced error, and capital in the space in mercenary is rotational, and then all of a sudden overnight you just become Blur airdrop farm father, and that's it.
Yeah, that makes sense. I don't know, Salty, do you have any thoughts on this? I know you've probably watched Azuki from afar. I don't think you're in it, but like, what are your thoughts on Azuki compared to some of the rest of the market over the last, say, 3 months?
What do you think about Azuki? That's the thing. I don't. That's from every movie ever, right? Dude, I have zero opinion on Azuki. I know there's some wealthy people in Spirit now, I think.
Salty's like, we could be asking people to send us free money, but you guys are still talking about the pictures.
Exactly. Why are you talking about the
Shitcoin
pictures?
ideas?
Yeah, dude, we just need, like, people are literally getting free money sent to them, and we're talking about pictures, right?
Every time we get on here, and Grant's like, all right, today we're going to talk about Captain's Grapes, new Beeple, like just the names, the stuff you're rattling off. I'm like, dude, I have no clue how you even keep up with this. Like, I'm just.
Well, Salty, tell us about well, give us your background on the last three ZK Sync projects, though. This is the other thing. We have to your brain is just being used by other things, I feel like.
It is. And the problem is, I think Eric said this a while ago, that NFTs really are the use case. The problem is what I'm doing is such obvious midwittery, because I'm like trying to figure out what's actually going to work and like look for good economic design, like all this stupid midwit garbage, instead of just being like, that's a good picture, I'll click that. So I'm obviously not the one making the most money here.
Well, that was the beauty of when shitcoin was really ripping. It's like there was a world where, right after Pepe took off, where over the next week and a half, really, and it was that short, really, it's like you could see and look at. And by the way, Sadie, who's not on here, is the queen of that. But like, you find a name that seems interesting enough, and if their Twitter handle is good, you get in under 100K, and you could get out at 1 million pretty easily, often, which is just weird that shit like that happens. You know what I mean? It's just name based stuff. All right, we should probably wrap up here. Before we go, anybody want to go through something you're looking forward to? I think this week, honestly, I'm going to say, like, I am looking forward to the Azuki event. I'm also really looking forward to meme, because I hold a captain, and I held through a bunch of stuff with captains, and I somehow held on to it all the way through. But I think I'm mostly looking forward to Diablo 4 this weekend. So that is my looking forward to pitch. Salty, are you looking forward to anything this coming week?
The immediate week, I maybe not. I mean, Ordinals had a nice time there.
Oh yeah,
It's been up and down, but the PAMP seemed to move to the Ordinals and the BRCs. So that's been cool.
actually, let me talk about that real quick, because I'm kind of curious, and I've been having this theory lately that I worry that ordinals are, again, when something I've missed, right? Because I think I was very much the cliche of we were we're pretty into ordinals early on, and we got into stuff, and then I just got really annoyed by what it was, and I was like, I don't have time to do the wallet stuff and everything else. Do you feel like ordinals, as somebody who's in that space, is it now here to stay, and are there significant opportunities that, if you're involved in that space, you think are long-term things that are going to make money for you?
I think since the ordinal marketplaces have evolved and matured, and since Unisat and other wallets have come out, yeah, I think the NFT space on Bitcoin's established. The few people who are still yelling about how we can fork Bitcoin nodes to prune these things and force reject the transactions have just been farther and further sidelined. So, like, there's really not a real chance of this, like, not continuing to be a thing. Uh, that doesn't mean it's too late to, like, look into it. I mean, Magic Eden has a wonderful interface for these things, and I think that opened up the door to people really trading at a much larger scale instead of just Google Sheets. But BRC stuff, the shitcoins on Bitcoin, I really don't know how that's going to play out. And so there might be more, alpha there, in understanding that BRC20 is, like, actually incredibly limited and kind of silly, and really only works on one website, and probably will only ever work on one website. And yes, you could run your own, like, secondary sequencer or whatever to, like, keep track of tokens yourself. I really don't like ordinals. Were brilliant, a genius little thing, they built, the way it works. But the way BRC is done, I mean, they have first mover advantage, and Lindy matters, but it's really easy for me to imagine much better token standards come out on Bitcoin.
You don't enjoy all of the friction points of buying an NFT on a much slower blockchain, but not having even the picture to look at. Like, that's not attractive to you.
I love it. I love it. And I love having to wrap every single token individually as an NFT to piggyback on the ordinal work others had done. So I'll just say, like, I'm not knocking BRC, but I think it's worth keeping your eyes open in that, like, I think there's going to be smarter people doing more interesting thing. And we've already seen the ORD 20 standard. We've seen OKX or somebody release some BRC 20 alternative.
Yes, I think a wrapper for BRC20 tokens that just reduces the friction point of actually transacting in them. Yeah, but I think I agree with you. I think like actually like smart people, not like laser-eyed dumbasses, are innovating in the space. And this is kind of a small part of like a larger argument of maintaining Bitcoin security in the long run and ensuring that it still stays as a viable SOV. So like it's good to see that this actually happened. It's good to see some innovation within the space, and it's fun. It's like there's less liquidity, there's more speculation. It's not nearly as gross as what's happening on ETH right now.
Yeah,
So
a lot less.
Are we gonna pretend people didn't throw $1 million into trustless computer and the GM token?
Oh yeah,
like
no,
that was worse than anything Ben created, by the way, because nobody got their money back. Like Ben at least made some pre-sellers money.
Oh yeah, that was trustless computer was not great. It was not great, but I guess next week we'll see who how much money people end up sending to Ben. I would be it would be very funny. I think if he comes out like with 9 figures after all of this, just because people continuously opt to send them what little money they have left, and because it's just I think it's just a good representation of where we are in the cycle right now.
And I do.
Grant, what do you? What else? Sorry,
I'm not going to defend the purity of ordinals or something. I mean, there's obviously people trying to take lots of advantage there, and I appreciate that most of the NFTs there seem to just be launched to be what they like. Like we've left the line about roadmaps and pretending there's a product meta, which I appreciate. But ordinals are just now getting to the stage of like truly on chain self-generatable art, like art blocks, with the launch of things like Squirtnals, which I think is coming up soon. So maybe that's what I'm looking forward to this week. But so I think like I think Eric said, it's fun. It is fun. It's nice to play in these nascent spaces. I think that's what attracts most people to spaces like this. And this is another new one. And it still is fairly new. Like there's still a lot to figure out.
Yeah. I mean, that's what's interesting about it to me, and I do need to dive into it. I just need to get a wallet and play around with it. Grant, are you looking forward to anything next week?
Not particularly. I was gonna before we got distracted with other topics, I was gonna go on a long angry rant about Beeple, but I would just like to say, as Ben continues his dominance of the ecosystem here, I'd like to see Beeple continue his descent into madness, because he's just refuses to let go of the fact that you can do other types of social commentary, right? Like you don't have to make art about shitcoins and pump shitcoins, right? Like you don't have to tweet out random tickers only for some North Korean dev to create that said shitcoin 5 minutes later and a bunch of people to get rugged. Like you can do that, right? Like I don't think my view of a singular person in crypto has fallen as much in like the 2 years that I've joined than Beeple.
Oh, interesting. That's a hot take. That's interesting.
Because I think he obviously onboarded a lot of good artists, blah 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 blah. But it's just like he has one track, and it's just to do like the most basic fundamental level of social commentary, and he can't do anything else. And it's been like that since Goblin Town, by the way, which has been a whole year.
I mean, granted, if he were Basquiat reborn, he could do that. But he's not. And the reality is, and sorry if this is hot take, but like I don't think the art is that great or incisive. I think he's been a good agent and onboarding agent into the space simply because he got somebody aggressively take this art at the top of the cycle. And he kind of benefits from that, the Lindy effect of being early and thus being good.
Yes.
But he is not necessarily, the art. It's not necessarily good. I think in the sense that it actually resonates with people or creates like meaningful social commentary. It is super, I think, reductive and surface, but that's also kind of the space in aggregate, right? So
also, by the
you know,
way,
what do
and
you
this is like an art thing, it's like, the guy's got a giant studio now. He's incredibly wealthy. Like, there's not much struggle there necessarily. So he's looking for inspiration in the places that he's looked at it before. And I think, like all of us, like, he doesn't know what the fuck he's doing because, like, the world sucks in this space, right? Like, yeah, not that I think you're right, Grant, that he should be looking to other things and he could probably open the door. But I mean, he's a character and a creation of this space. And he's just reflecting the dumb shit that's going on in it right now. It's like, I think it would be great to see him expand out, but I also agree, Eric. I don't know if he's like, I mean, I'm not sure if I would think that the art level there is super high in a certain way, but art is its own thing. Everyone has their own flavor.
And by the way, I think he's done a lot of good as a whole in terms of using his money for that space and just making it as kind of this like mini collective to give a platform for like a new artists that are new aspiring artists on the scene that are producing like really meaningful stuff. So if nothing, like I would like to see people evolve into this, outer stage person role where he's not necessarily a lead artist, but he's at least given like put on a lot of new guys that constitute the next wave of big names in whether it's like Gen art or AI or whatever, right? Like I do think that he serves a valuable role. I just don't think the art is that good.
Yeah,
I think we're back at the same problem where crypto's created some really good high concept stuff, but we're just like constantly like blockaded by false idols. Like, should we talk about like the fucking Wimbledon NFTs in my hidden folder? Should we talk about 10KTF? Should we talk about Warm XYZ and how that product is shit and gets outworked by a single person in Fubar? Should we talk about his acquisition of Renga and how that's doing? Like, he's just not, given his relative stature in the ecosystem, he's nowhere near where he should be, right? And now he spends his time basically elevating Ben, right? Like, people know about Ben because of,
yes,
high stature people like Beeple, right? Like, that's one element that we missed in the conversation. Like, there are all these vultures who have nothing better to do than spend 16 hours on Spaces talking about this shit, right? And same goes for him.
It's just it's like kind of like like the arc of a Hollywood actor who explodes into superstardom and then wanes off. Like, you kind of do the first thing, right, and it's novel. And in this case, the blockchain was the novelty, so anything that you were doing on blockchain was by default cutting edge, right? And now the shame's kind of washed off, and everybody sees it for what it is. And if it's mid, it's mid work. Right. I think like a big part of the issue of this space is that a lot of the people who are early and wealthy and supposed to thought leaders in the space are really just early and not necessarily good. And we haven't been able to actually replenish the talent ranks with people that are actually good because this type of market is not necessarily like inviting to new entrants. From a regular perspective, from a wealth creation perspective, and certainly from like a long-term reputational or like employment perspective, it's all just kind of toxic right now. So that I'm hopeful that'll change, but it just like Grant said, like the old idols of past past eras have to kind of go away, and we just have to move on.
Yep, that makes sense. Kill your idols, everybody. Kill your idols. That's a good way to end the show. All right, everybody. Thank you for coming in. It's another episode of the Midcurve Podcast. We will see you all next week. Great. Hopefully everybody survives. Don't send free money to anybody, please. If you can, avoid it. It's never a good idea. And you should keep your money.
What if it goes up 1,000 times?
If it goes up 1,000 times, you're gonna still just keep your money.
Do what makes you happy. Send the money.
Do what makes you happy. Sure, send the money away. Why not? Just live your life. All right, everybody. Thanks so much. We'll see you all next week.